I'm Elena Howe, and this is for Educational Leadership 612, Instructional Strategies and Leadership. And this is for the summer of 2012. This is it for Unit 3. It's a differentiated center group based upon a lesson plan that was designed for plants. This lesson would be one of 30, and then these centers are differentiated based on students that are at risk, regular education students, as well as gifted education students. Each center is set up in a way that shows all three areas and can be tailored to what the student needs. This differentiated center should be based on not only student needs, but their interests, their learning profile, their process, their content, and then the final product will vary and change as well. The first thing the students need would be this paper. It looks similar to a report card. The students would have to be taught how to do independent activities prior to each center. So we're going to base everything upon that understanding at this point. The centers are labeled 1 through 6. The student's name is on the card, as well as the name of the center, and then a folder color. This is very important because each folder, we have purple, green, and orange. The purple folders are referred to as regular education students, and the green is referred to as the student that needs more support or is at risk. And the orange folder is for students who are gifted. As you can see, this is for the child Cindy Lou Who. Cindy Lou would need to get a different colored folder for each activity. This is differentiating the activity for her needs based on her learning profile and her interests. As you can see, Center 1 will be a science center. She will do the activity that a regular education student would do. The number 2, she would do something that she struggles in a little bit, and that would be the logical reasoning and math area. Then when she moves on to language arts, her center is going to be orange. She's going to grab the orange folder. Each time she completes an activity, she comes over to the left-hand column and places an X. And again, it's very important that you teach a student how to use this before they're asked to do so. So let's go through each center very briefly and explain each one. The first center has 3 folders. Again, the purple, orange, and green. If you look at Cindy Lou, she needs to look for purple first for Center 1. So she would pick up the purple folder. On the front is the name of the center, what the center is targeting, as well as the concept. So when Cindy Lou reads this, she knows she's learning about plants that have a life cycle, and that some plants start with a seed and end with a flower that will produce another seed that will continue the life cycle. And then on the front, she has directions 1 through 5 that she'll need to follow. When you open the folder, there's also, the same as the front, another direction sheet. There may be more than one student using the center at a time because they're working independently on these activities at their own learning style and pace, so that she can take this out if another student has the one on the front. And there would be several in here if this were an actual center in a classroom. And as she reads through her activity, she'll need to use the materials that are set out right beside the activity, including templates and a final product, an example, and other construction paper. On the other side of the table, I also have set up markers, crayons, everything that she would need, including glue sticks, everything in the baskets, and expo markers. Anything that you can think of that a child would need support with would be over there that they can grab and take to their seats or do at this table or area, because they may want to do it with a partner as well. So this would be the regular ed student in this activity. They are doing the life cycle of the seed and writing it on a flower, and then using an arrow with a brad attached to talk about with a partner at the end each stage so that they can practice these stages. The regular ed student would write 1 sentence on their own here, and the sentence wouldn't have to have a lot of detail, just explaining each step 1 through 5 after they construct the plant out of the template. So that's what the regular ed student would do. The student that is gifted would do the same type a flower based on the 5 steps from seed to flower, and then the flowering seed releasing another seed. But they would be asked to go into more detail than this. They'd be asked to go to do a descriptive sentence and maybe even a paragraph on this activity for each stage, and there's room enough here for them to write, okay? Now, what makes this different as well and differentiates it based on learning needs is that the student that needs more support will probably not have time to process all of that and get through each activity. And since it's not a writing activity or a language arts activity, but basically a science activity, I already went through and made these labels. On the labels, it has the 5 steps and stages to planting a seed, but they are out of order. So the student will need to first go through with the directions. It says you'll need to write a number 1 through 5 on these, and then when you know the order 1 through 5, you can simply put them on the flower in that order, okay? It also has a check sheet on the back where they can look to see if they were correct, and it will label 1 through 5 to say, I really did think this was number 1, and oh, it was number 3, so that they can check themselves. And there's some little hint cards in here in the folder as well. In the back is a hint card where if they get stuck or struggle, that they can go through the hint card. So that would be center number 1. We're going to move a little more quickly through the other centers now that you have the idea of how to differentiate the center. Number 2 is a logical reasoning center where the students would be able to decide what kind of plants that we eat. And this is something from the FOSS Science Kit the students would experiment with and do hands-on experiments. So this is seeds, stems, flowers, and roots. They have pictures below that they're going to cut out and place into the category that we would eat these plants. Are we eating the flower, the seed, the root, or the stem? So this is regular education. This would be for your gifted student. You're asking your gifted student to not only cut and paste, but to go a step further and write at least 2 to 3 more vegetables that would go under each to have them step it up and think of some other vegetables or plants that they eat. And the student that needs more support, or the at-risk student, would have them color-coded so that they would know if I can tell that this is a flower, the other orange one's a flower, they go in a group together. It just gives them that extra step to know that which ones go together, because some of them are hard to decide, is it really a stem? And if they can decide one of them, hopefully they'll have a group that will go together. There's also hint cards behind it here, and those hint cards will give them that support, like look for a green vegetable that you would eat with such and such that has a crown on the top, so that they could go through and use that hint as well. Center 2. Center 3 is here, and, excuse me, Center 3 is a poetry center. So the students are asked to write a poem, to respond to a poem, or to write their own poem based on 3 poems that you've already discussed in your classroom. So each center will be differentiated. There's some examples in this book of Math for the Seasons of Poetry, and the regular ed student would have examples in their kit. Also, they would have a write your own poem here and respond, as well as the gifted student would go above that, would know the 3 types of poetry we've talked about: haiku, couplet, and acrostic, and they would be able to write that of their choice. There are examples behind here that show what each poem is, an acrostic, a couplet, as well as a haiku. And then there are pattern-shaped pieces here with borders that they can create their own poems and respond to a poem. And this would be the students at risk. They're simply responding through an illustration at this point. You want to know what they're getting from the poem, what is the main idea of the poem, and are they understanding what the poet is trying to translate to them. And there are several poems that they can choose from, so they can choose a poem that they enjoy about plants. Okay, Center 4 is a math center with number stories and comparing numbers. This whole plant unit is taught in the spring, so most students are familiar with comparing numbers using symbols. They have example sheets, as well as in the inside they are asked, the regular education student is asked to respond to a number story, which they should be familiar with. The advanced student will not only do that products and compare numbers, but they're doing numbers in the hundreds place instead of the tens place as the regular education students. At the end, they're not only responding to your number story, but they're creating a number story about plants on their own. And then after that, they're going to give it to a partner that's also working on the orange folder group. and have their partner solve their problem. So they're taking that to another step. Okay, the green is your at-risk student, and this student is doing sums up to 40, okay, which is where you would expect a student that is at risk to respond to that. So they're doing single and double digit addition, as well as responding to a number story that I don't want to say is lower level, but is at their level and may not be above in the hundreds place. It'll be a tens place answer. So next, center number 4, incorporating plant stories and number stories and math. Center number 5 is here. This is Science Through Technology Center. In this unit, they will use our classroom computers. We are very, very fortunate to have about a ratio of 2 students per computer. So this is an independent time. Not all of them will be at the same center at the same time, and they can do them in any order they want. So if this computers are full, they would need to go to another center. What they're doing here is they're using something called Cricket Web, and it tells them the activity they need to do, as well as the quiz they will take after it on Cricket Web. And then afterwards, they'll do an I learned statement, and they're asked to do each, whether it is a regular education gifted or an at-risk student, will be asked to respond to so many I learned statements. In this case, the students will make 3 I learned statements, but their paper will consist of at least 5 so that they can try to challenge themselves. So each student will be doing an activity at their own pace. Each one on Crick Web is very different and for their needs. The 6th and final center would be a Plan Exploration Center that's used on the computer as well. It's Language Arts Through Technology. So they'll be doing language arts types activities. Each one has a different website. I wanted to show you very briefly how the students would know what websites to go on. So come on over to the computer. This is a language arts activity that would be set up for technology and plants. This is the Great Plant Escape. When the student goes onto the computer and logs on, they will be given specific directions that tell them how to get here. They'll go to the Favorites tab, drop it down, and find the name of their activity for today. So this is the activity that they're doing, and they would just go through the activity, reading each case, and it's outlined which case the students are to work on. And then there's a quiz at the end that they would take, print out, and give to me to see if they're understanding the activities. This is based on vocabulary and phonics building using plants. So this is a really great website as well. Just to take a brief overview of the table one more time, each center is set up based on student interest, process, content, product is different for each student based on their needs. You can see that this is designed for interest. It has everything that the student needs. It has plants that the students have grown in the classroom and our classroom plants that they've taken care of. That's going to draw them in and get their interest to the center. I hope you enjoyed each activity, and I look forward to doing more. Thank you.